since I mentioned about risk, ayun na naman, I'm an auditor again. So, I want to focus this time on something I believe that our auditors are very passionate about. It's risk management. So, is there any interrelation or, when you talk about risk management, ESG, how can we integrate these two concepts and framework to be able to really get the most out of it? Yeah.
I think I can answer that one. So for risk management, I think sustainability, as mentioned also earlier, that there is risks related to sustainability, and those risks that were identified related to sustainability should already be integrated in the overall enterprise risk management of businesses. So you can really you have to ensure that all of those risks that were identified to sustainability were also incorporated and integrated in your overall risk management, because the risks is already there. For example, when you talk about climate-related risks, for example, here in the Philippines, we already experienced recently that there are a lot of typhoons. We've experienced last year consecutive typhoons, and those typhoons can have an impact to businesses. There can be high risk of flooding in relation to those typhoons. And for companies who have assets and properties that are located in areas that are prone to floods, then they can be highly affected by flooding, by typhoons. And those risks, if you're not able to identify them at the first hand, then you might not be able to respond accordingly to those risks. So it's very important that part of your risk management procedures that you're already considering these types of risk in addition to the market risk, financial risk that we are usually seeing in the companies that they are doing. So if companies were able to identify those risks at the first hand, then they'll be able to prepare and plan ahead as well as respond to those risks. Maybe they can take mitigating measures or even adapt to these events, if any. So they can look into having plans that will help them mitigate the risk of flooding. So they will be more prepared in terms of addressing those risks.
Yeah, correct. Oo, kasi it would create business disruption as
Yes,
well.
correct.
In a company, we have this, what we call the emergency risk committee, taking care of those things, parang they meet regularly and test the procedures and something like, okay, still in risk and control. You can add,
just to back up what Crystal mentioned, that's why some of our clients, they tend to ask us, sustainability professionals, and even risk professionals, to look into the traditional ERM.
Okay.
Like
traditional ERM.
Yeah, because the traditional ERM just composed of the financial and operational risk, right? That's the risk universe. So, siguro, ang pinaka sasabihin ko sa client is that for them to look into the risk universe, whether nandun na ba yung sustainability or ESG risk, right? Because that would have an impact also to the audit risk, na kapag, di ba, when you perform ERM and hindi nakasama si sustainability and ESG risk, there's a tendency na hindi siya makukuha for audit. Kasi, di ba, you prioritize sa risk
high
universe.
risk,
high risk, di ba? Yun yung lalagyan.
Yeah, correct. Oo nga, tama. So, that's one of the advice of our experts, internal auditors. Look at that.
Right.
Okay. Again, risk. And internal audit again. I read a survey. Mahilig ako sa survey. I read a survey. I think it's at LinkedIn or where. There was a mention about in 2021, so I don't know if this is applicable right now, but in 2021, a survey said that only 1% of the audit plan of internal audit includes ESG, sustainability, and I don't know if a bit sad, but perhaps there's an improvement. It's 4 years ago, but still, my question is relating also on GIAS, the new GIAS or the standards wherein they are mentioning that internal auditor should really add value to the organization. So in relation to ESG, sustainability implementation, how do you think internal auditor could add value aside from reviewing doing testing on data when you talk about ESG implementation. I think everyone would love to hear from you on that aspect.
Okay, so
Anyone?
try to
Okay.
respond to that. Now, of course, I think it's still the primary role of the internal auditor to check the completeness and accuracy of ESG data, no? Because these information and data are also very relevant to the management, no, to the decision makers, and to the stakeholders, especially if these data come out in the sustainability report. So it's very crucial that the internal auditors check, the controls behind getting the information and the data, the robustness and the integrity of the system used as well. But aside from that, no, just going beyond the information, I think the internal auditors can also be helpful in improving the ESG performance of the company. How? It can assess the company in terms of how it performs versus its set targets, set ESG or sustainability KPIs. So for them to do that, they have to also check whether the company already has an ESG framework in place. And of course, following that, initiatives and indicators and metrics and targets on which they measure themselves against. So the internal auditors can do this gap assessment and highlight this to the management and provide recommendations as well, so that the management would keep track also of their performance and also help them achieve these goals.
I agree to that, Kate. And maybe just to add, since internal audits we're already doing reviews, documentation of checking of controls, they can use the same discipline in terms of the non-financial performance, because they have this capability already to check the completeness and accuracy of data. So they can apply this in the non-financial reporting as well.
It's just like a consulting activity, right? Anyone?
Yeah, so essentially, our role as in the IA, we become the strategic enabler in a sense, because we're doing more than what's, and we're integrating ESG already into our perspectives.
Earlier, we're discussing about the percentage of sustainability audit that internal auditors are doing. But that was like 4 years ago, as I mentioned. Do you agree that perhaps this is still the same, or what should internal auditors do to be able to somehow elevate that percentage into a more higher percentage in their audit plans?
Maybe to answer, Neriza.
Okay.
So recently, what we're seeing is that more companies are reaching out to us to capacitate their internal audit groups, because they believe the integration of sustainability in the knowledge and capacity of internal audit is important. So hopefully, this year's that 1% has already increased.
2%.
Yeah.
Hopefully more than that.
But actually, that's quite alarming talaga. Kasi if you look into the World Economic Forum, right, annually they release the top global risk, right?
Oh, and
it's
first.
somehow not connecting, because if you look into the top risk, ang daming
Of the
environment
long-term risks,
related,
Top 5
social related, right, ESG related. And if that's the top risk that the companies are currently facing right now, the IA should also do its job to somehow help mitigate or manage the risk, right? So hoping na baka dapat tumaas na right now, and also with the regulations right now with the SEC, we're expecting na tataas talaga siya.
I think there's really a gap, no? During, for there are surveys. Now you mentioned about surveys, and we look at the surveys. They would really say, even internal auditors would say that one of the top risks is sustainability.
Right.
But if you look at their plan, it's not in their plan. So I think the gap perhaps is for internal auditors to educate their knowledge, understanding about ESG, so you can really include this in their audit plan, right?
Yes.
And perhaps also the maturity of the organization where they belong.
Correct.
Are they really into sustainability? If not, what will you audit, right? So something like that. Or
And it's funny because it's another evolution for internal auditors. Because nung nagkaroon ng technology disruption, right, naging IT auditors sila at some point. And now, because of the sustainability, parang there's another evolution right now. Right? And I think that's the one thing na maganda rin with IAs, no? They always respond to the needs of time.
Yes, and they are not disrupted
Yeah.
I love
changing.
that.
Yeah.
Love
Very
that.
resilient.
Resilient.
Yeah.
Evolving. Continuously
Yeah.
evolving.
Continuously
no?
trial.
Will
Yeah.
manage every time.
Yeah.